Hello and welcome back to HITC Sevens. It's been over a month since my first Q&A as part of this series. Obviously I did the first ones when I hit 200,000 subscribers. But yeah, I'm back. I decided I was ready to be told that I had a voice like a newsreader and a face like a stoner again, and likened to Todd Cantwell and Adrian Rabiot. So here we go. I'm planning on making this a sort of monthly feature whereby I put out a topic on the YouTube community and on Twitter. So the first one, if you watched it, not many people did, but if you were one of the few, it was on international football, and this month's is on the 2020s, the next decade in football. Clearly some people didn't understand that. Lots of questions about the previous 10 years, so apologies if I didn't make that clear, but I'll try and focus on the questions that are actually about the next 10 years, and also I will answer fewer questions because the last video was over half an hour long and a lot of people said that's too long. Don't get it. I mean, you could just stop midway through if that was too long for you, but I'll make it a bit shorter, so I'll probably answer slightly fewer questions. I'm just going to go through the ones with the most likes or the ones that came up most frequently. Okay, so the most liked question on the YouTube community from Maximus Jonathus was actually multiple questions, but the first one was, who will win the most Ballon d'Ors next decade? Which is a good one because actually a few people asked that, so I'll address that one. I mean, I say that like I know, obviously I will guess, as any of you could. I think the only obvious one is Mbappe. You would think, given his current career trajectory, it would take something special, either someone else unbelievably good coming along or him suffering a awful cruciate ligament injury, which obviously you wouldn't wish upon anyone. He's the one who looks most likely. I think someone else asked a very similar question saying discarding Mbappe. I think that was someone else asked that. In which case, without Mbappe, it's much more difficult. There maybe someone like Jadon Sancho or I think Leroy Sané will go on and have an excellent career. They're not necessarily who I think are the two best young players, but the Ballon d'Or obviously tends to go to a more attacking player. I know Van Dijk came close in 2019, but if you look across the years, it tends to be a forward player. Personally, I really like Frankie de Jong. I think he's brilliant, but again, a little bit less eye-catching across 12 months playing as a central midfielder, not particularly attack-minded one. So yeah, Mbappe is the obvious one, if I'm not allowed to say him. Maybe Sancho or Sané. Also from Maximus Jonathus, he asked, will there be another team like the Leicester City 2016 team that wins the Prem or any other top 5 league? And if so, what team would it be? Make a guess if you don't have any idea. Well, I would have to make a guess because obviously I don't have any idea. Otherwise I would lump some money on it. But like Leicester winning the Premier League, I mean, when you think they'd only just survived relegation and were 5,000 to 1 odds, I would say no, not that extreme. But 10 years is a long time, so obviously it's quite possible that there will be a surprise winner of one of those 5 leagues, I would expect. If I had to make a guess about who would be as shocking as Leicester, maybe someone currently West Brom have got a decent youth setup, so I guess it's not impossible that they'd have a good crop of young players coming through. Someone asked if I thought Leeds would win the Premier League in the next 10 years. I guess that would be shocking, but if you ask me, do I think they will? No, but if there was someone shocking that was going to, there are a couple of candidates. They are just full-on guesses, as anyone would have to for a question like that. From Addison Chan, Do you believe there will be a transfer of at least £500 million / euros within 10 years? And also, will there be a footballer earning more than 1.5 million, presumably pounds or euros again, per week within 10 years? So the first one, a transfer of at least £500 million or euros in 10 years, that's difficult to say. I suppose when we came into the last decade, so in 2010, Cristiano Ronaldo would have been the record, and that was 80, I believe. And then we end it with 200 pretty much, well, 198 I think Neymar was reported as. So it basically, well, more than doubled, a good bit more than doubled. So if it did the same again, it would be close to half, if history repeated itself. Obviously, you've always got to factor in basic inflation. Not very interesting, but yeah, there tends to be an average of about 3% inflation. So even if there was no inflation in football, as there has been a lot over the last 10 years, but just general inflation of 3%, you'd probably expect a fee the same as Neymar's in 10 years' time to be maybe over 250, probably about 260 million. Would just be keeping up pace with the rest of society. If it kept going at the rate it's going, then it's quite possible. As for a footballer earning £1.5 million a week, I think that would happen probably before the halfway point of the decade. We've already got, Lionel Messi already earns in excess of £1 million in a week, so reportedly. So yeah, I would think that would be almost definite. The next question, well, can you please do an all-time 11? I have done. I'll try and leave a link to that somewhere. Yeah, not necessarily about the next 10 years, but yeah, I'll plug that in there. Okay, moving on to another question. Chazza asks, who do you think will be the most expensive players at the end of the next decade? Well, I would suspect, given that transfer fees tend to rise as inflation does, that the most expensive fees of the decade will most likely occur towards the back end of the decade. And given that the most expensive fees tend to be paid for younger players due to their sell-on values and what you're likely to get return on your investment, the most expensive players in the next decade probably aren't even footballers yet. They're probably 13, 14 years old, maybe in academies, but certainly I wouldn't have heard of them. That would be my prediction. Obviously, there could be a huge transfer early in the decade and so on. If Mbappe was to move to Real Madrid or something like that for over 200 million, that could be hard to beat for some time. But I would hazard a guess that the most expensive player of the 2020s, very few of us have heard of. Max Z FIFA asks, who is the player you are most excited for this upcoming decade? Have a good year, my friend. You too, Max Z FIFA, thank you very much. The player I'm most excited about is probably Keane Lewis Potter, who is a teenage lad at Hull City who has just played a few cameo appearances so far, but has got a couple of goals off the well. One of them got taken off and got given as an own goal, but he looks an exciting young player. So from a sort of biased Hull City perspective, that's the one I'm probably most excited about. In the wider context of football, obviously excited about some of the young players that England have got, what they can achieve, the likes of Maddison and Mount and Abraham and Alexander-Arnold, Tomori. There's lots. Excited about all of them. I've said I like Frankie de Jong a lot. I'm excited to watch him play, and Arthur with him at Barcelona. I think they're both good players to watch. So yeah, lots of players that I'm excited to watch, but Keane Lewis Potter would be the one that I would pick. Excited to see how he gets on when he starts getting more regular game time in the Hull City first team. Next, a lot of people asked this one. I don't know who I will pick out particularly as having asked it. Jacob Finley says, do you think there will be any serious movement by / pressure on professional footballers and national FAs to boycott the Qatar World Cup? And like I say, there are a few questions about the Qatar World Cup, presumably because I've said in the past, been fairly outspoken about it. Sadly, I don't think there will be, no. I think we would have already heard movement on that front if anything was going to happen. It's not exactly a secret, is it? The labour that's being used to build the stadiums and the general sort of human rights issues in Qatar. The Club World Cup's just happened there, and there were murmurs in the press about what do you think. They asked Jurgen Klopp, but it's I just don't think there's the sort of political will there to do anything about it. I think people are just I think it'll happen. There'll be probably some more reports coming out the closer we get to it. People hazarding more guesses about how many people have died and that kind of thing. But I don't think anyone will boycott. I would love it if they did, all of them, and just did a sort of splinter World Cup somewhere that already had the infrastructure. That'd be brilliant, but incredibly slim the chances of anything like that happening, or it moving to Argentina, as it always seems to on Football Manager. There were also a lot of questions about Hull City. Obviously, I've mentioned Keane Lewis Potter already. So people saying, where will Hull City be at the end of the decade? How do you see the next few years going? I'm looking at, there's about 15 questions about Hull City in total. So one from Joe, one from Harrison. Basically, it's very, very difficult to say where we'll be in a couple of years, let alone at the end of the decade. For those of you who don't know, there's a lot of protests and things like that at Hull City at the moment. The ownership hasn't been popular for, feels like forever now, since, I suppose the first thing was when Nick Barmby was sacked, and then there was the name change and concessions being scrapped, then I'm back. A lot of things have gone on. The club's apparently been for sale for a long time, but we don't seem anywhere close to a sale. But the team's doing okay. The team is there or thereabouts in terms of the playoffs, which is as much as we could have hoped for going into the season. The problem is that we'll almost certainly lose Jared Bowen in the summer if we keep hold of him this January, and then I couldn't see us being a playoff chasing team without him. You never know though. But is it possible we'll return to the Premier League? Yes. Is it possible, as I think it was Joe thought, that we'll be in League 2? Yes. I think both are possible. I think surely the ownership will change within the next 10 years. And whether we get a good owner or a bad owner will most likely dictate how well we do over that period. So what a nothing answer that was. You're very welcome. Few people asked about me personally over the next 10 years. There were a couple about whether I plan on writing another book, what it would be about, whether I had any ideas in the pipeline. And someone else asked personal plans for the next 10 years. Do I think I'll still be on YouTube? With the book, there's nothing immediately planned now. I shouldn't think I will write another book in the next 3 to 5 years. The first one was pretty draining and also cost me a lot of money and took an awful lot of time that I no longer have, because I spend a lot of time on making YouTube videos. I have plenty of ideas though. If I do decide to do it, I've got about 4 ideas that I think would make for good books. Whether a publisher would agree, I suppose, is a different question. Me personally, I genuinely have no idea. I don't even know whether YouTube will be a platform in 10 years, so I don't know whether, dread to think that I'd still be doing this in 10 years, but you never know. It's possible, and I don't know what else I would do other than return to writing about football, which is, I guess, what I still do. I'd just no longer be talking about it to a camera or with a load of pictures going across the screen. Lots of questions about rule changes and primarily VAR, whether I think it will be scrapped, whether I think it will be amended, that type of thing. I would be surprised if it was scrapped. I think it's here to stay. I originally thought in principle it was a good idea. In action, less so. I think it's taken some of the... I did a whole video about it, so if you want to watch my views on VAR, there's a video called Why I Changed My Mind on VAR, if you're particularly interested in what I think of it. But yeah, I think it's here to stay. I think it will be amended. I think we'll see referees, as they do in some leagugues. I think I saw in Australia that it's more common practice, checking the screen a bit more and ironing out some of what constitutes clear and obvious, that type of thing. I think we've already seen that change mid-season in the Premier League, which seems strange, but hopefully they can find some kind of better balance. I don't know how you would amend the sort of ridiculous offside situations, but maybe they will. Maybe it's possible. I don't know how. Personally, I'd like to see the offside ruling, there be a time limit whereby if the person at Bletchley Park can't tell within, say, X amount of seconds, 30 seconds surely is long enough. If you've got the technology to watch and rewatch and you are still not sure if someone's offside after that amount of time, then give the benefit of the doubt to the attacker, as used to be the case. Offside is there to prevent someone from goal hanging and essentially gaming the system, not to stop someone with size 13 boots, being able to get in because their foot is slightly longer than someone else's. It's just not what the rule's there for. So yeah, that's what I think on VAR. Personally, if it was up to me, at this point I would say good idea in theory, but let's get rid of it. But I don't think they will. Right, I'd probably best wrap things up round about now, seeing as though I said I wasn't going to make another half-hour video, and the video's already 17 or 18 minutes long. I have recorded some more of your questions, questions such as, do I think Australia will be a suitable World Cup host? Do I think an African national team will win the World Cup in the next 10 years? And what will Liverpool look like after Jurgen Klopp leaves? Those are all questions that I've recorded but don't have time to include. If by some miracle this video does well, then I could always do a part 2 in theory and include those questions that I've already recorded. Let me know in the comments if there is a topic for next month's Q&A that you'd particularly like to see. Give us a like if for some reason you enjoyed this video. Thank you as ever for watching, and make sure you are subscribed to HITC Sevens.